I want to ask you a couple of questions. How long do you fly from Berlin to Moscow? 2.5, not bad. Who was in Russia? Not bad at all. Who can tell me how many journalists have been shot in Russia over the last 15 years? 10, 15, 20, 100, 180, 150. Who plays pool billiard? Who plays chess? Also not bad. And we will come later to that sort of talents. It's not only yoga, what we need and I need in these days. It's pool, billiard, and chess. Let me tell you 3 stories. I'm 18 years in Russia. I love the country, and it was the luckiest moment coming from the north of Germany, from a small village, Schleswig-Holstein. Not really sort of in my biography to live and work in Russia. 89, traveling with a beautiful professor from university here in Berlin to a field trip to Moscow. And 89, I went to the Central Telegraph. At those times, we didn't have mobile phones. We sent telexes. And I wrote to my parents, I stay in the Soviet Union, lots of love, Regina. That was it. Not really the sort of highest emotions at home. And I started as a journalist for Der Spiegel, and then later on went for further education and came back to Russia in '96. And it was an accident that, and now I have to say, had the most lovely, greatest 10 years doing the job I love for the company I adore, Axel Springer, giving the platform, and having the greatest, bravest team. I started 2005, and just prior that one, our editor-in-chief, Paul Chlebnikov, close friend of mine, was shot in front of the door of our publishing house. The team, of course, and here we come to the leadership. How can you run a team where one of their leaders was shot 5 meters in front of the door? At that time, we were just in the middle of the pilot issue of Newsweek Russia. Axel Springer was very ambitious. They wanted to start not with computer build, auto build, Bild der Frau. No, they went for the high crown of free press, investigative and corruptional stories like Forbes and Newsweek. Forbes was already existing. Newsweek was in the making. Newsweek known to be also politically extremely critical. So my start was a start, and here we come to the first one. In crisis times, for leadership in volatile environments, you need to be extremely calm. Or, and here my farm background helps, down to earth, no sort of paranoia. Just see what you see 5 meters in front of you. Don't get paranoia, just stay calm, stay grounded. And that's why I love the yoga teaching. I just started, unfortunately too late. I should have done it 10 years ago. Critical moment, and I tell you a story, Forbes 2006. That was my, not the last 3 weeks, was my international shitstorm. It was Forbes 2006 scandal. Story is a nice one. I was only 1 year in the company. We were trying to balancing the portfolio from political journalism also to sort of non-politicals because we were trying to balance it a little bit more. And we had at that time the mayor of Moscow, Mr. Yuri Lushkov, and his wife was accidentally the richest lady in Russia, accidentally due to construction. So I love, of course, the topics about corruption. I'm in the motherland of corruption. Welcome to Nigeria. And here I want to talk about conflict lines. The Forbes team, and I'm very strict as a publisher and CEO, you are legally liable for the text published. It's not the editor-in-chief. So whatever comes up in court cases goes against the CEO, or as you say in Russian, the general manager, or generalny director. The team was working on a story and an interview with the wife of the mayor of Moscow, and she was the biggest lady in construction. Moscow booming 2006, and I make it very short. 8 conflict lines appeared where it is extremely difficult to keep a team together, to give the calmness, to be professional, to answer also to your group in Germany after the editor-in-chief was shot. She gave a quote, and I will never forget it. She said in the interview, "I am protected, as everybody investors in Moscow." So she wanted to express, I have no special sort of rules because my husband is deciding on construction permits. Editor-in-chief, totally understood, not quite professional, shortened it to "I'm protected" on the cover. And she saw it 4 days prior publication, and she went to court, and she made it very easy, 100 million rubles in Moscow, 100 million euros in London, and 100 million euros in Frankfurt. And I said, oh my, that's not my salary. And the conflict lines are different. The editorial teams in journalism in Russia after the perestroika, it's extremely important that they can write the way they want. Nobody, and even not in our Western understanding of sort of publishing functionalities, should interfere. We have a different approach, but coming from this sort of background of Soviet Union, I understand Russian journalists are extremely emotional if anybody and anyhow sort of touching their primary sort of rules. German colleagues would have been much more relaxed, not my Russian team. Of course, the lady herself and her husband, utterly sort of not amused. And there was a very funny story. At that time, I had a lovely assistant, not a secretary assistant, but a male, 1.96 m, German-Russian, Peter, and he came to my office and said, "Chefin, outside, there are people, they're taller than me, and they have no appointment." And I thought, okay. And then he said, "I want to smoke a cigarette downstairs." I said, no, I need help now here. The conflict line there was that, and here comes now Forbes as a licensee, they are sort of principalities, sort of giving the right that the team decides what to publish. Axel Springer in Berlin said, "Can you secure the sort of security of the editor-in-chief?" Of course, I cannot secure security of anybody in Russia, not even of myself if I don't have professional counseling. Then we had the mayor who said, "I want to close down your company." So we had 8 different conflict lines, and 1 week it was a press and worldwide disaster because it was a clash between freedom of speech, Western principles, a person who said, and by the way, she was right, the lady, that she was not sort of copied or quoted right in the right sense, a team who said, "I want my independence." I call it the Forbes diet. I lost 7 kilos in 1 week. And I knew it is time to leave the country when I tried to find security at 5 o'clock in the morning, and 6 security companies said, "Against Mr. Lushkov, we cannot help you." How do you run teams if you have such a situation? First of all, grounded. Secondly, humor. I found out humor helps sometimes. When you think you're really in deep trouble, you can make it with a little bit sort of wow, laughing. Trying to calm it down, try to understand, and here the third one comes. It's not empathy, it's sort of try to understand what is your motivation, why you do not or cannot understand that we have here a cultural clash between publishing principles in the West and, yes, your freedom of speech in Russia. Long discussions, and the Newsweek team, of course, was extremely solidary with the freedom of speech. For me, also interesting to understand in the US, they didn't understand at all what they were talking about. They said, "Publish." And I said, no. This is not the way it goes, because here we would have a court case. So, and my boss in Germany said, "Can you protect the editor-in-chief?" Just after 1 year, the other one was shot. I was quite new in the group. So finally, we decided, and I think it was a wise decision, and I said, "I'm totally yours now because I can understand this side, and that side." Finally, we decided, editor-in-chief stayed, one of my greatest friends until today, despite of the fact that he made a mistake. 1 week, the journal was not published and was in the warehouse with guards around. Forbes in the US afterwards said, "Oop, might have been a different sort of situation. And my boss and I, we were traveling back to Russia and hoping that they will accept me at the border. And here I have to admit, when we came to the border, he said, "Oh, you check first, you go first." And that's up for diversity. Second story, Newsweek 2010, how you manage teams in sort of hostile environments. Editor-in-chief, I was just landing in Moscow, texting me about 20 text messages and said, "Please come as soon as possible to the office." I said, yeah, I'm on my way. And I said, "What's up?" I called him and he said, "Cannot talk on the phone." So I came to the editorial and we have an open space office. Normally it's quite busy. Average age 27, so lots of noise. Silence. Everybody looked at me and I thought, what's wrong? Something is smelling here, something is wrong. He was sitting in my office, and I make it very short. He said, "I cannot tell you, I have to show you." And I said, "What are you showing me?" It was a compromising video, my editor-in-chief of Newsweek Russia, on YouTube, not dressed, with a white substance and two ladies in nice positioning. Okay. So in the Russian context, you ask yourself, is it fake montage or Photoshop, or is it real? He said it's real. Okay. Then I said, okay, what are we going to do? I said, give me 5 minutes, because I saw already Newsweek calling, Axel Springer calling, and I said, okay, let's call your wife first and ask her to come to the office. I think she deserves now the most answers. So we did. It took us about 24 hours to find out it's compromising material against 8 liberal sort of politicians and journalists. We made it public, and the other people on the videos outed themselves. And so then I said, I'm protecting my team. If you think we are too liberal, this is a fake. And I love this story because since then we have T-shirts in the company. In our family, you are taped and filmed. Lesson learned here also, keep calm. Don't jump to the first conclusion. That's billiard. Russian politics and Russian sort of behavior is playing billiard. What you think is obvious on the first sight is definitely not the story behind it. So you have to learn to play billiard and understand who's doing what and when. For us Westerners, if Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin is sort of giving his political commands, for you it's abrupt. Internally they're communicating, discussing. Outside it comes only as, this is the way we do. Very sort of cultural difference, as well as not public discussions about topics. Chess. You have to understand in such countries, chess. Who's doing with whom? What are you doing if? If you're moving now the lady from A to Z, what's happening? You have to calculate already up in advance what are the repercussions which might come up for people in security situations, oppressions, or compromising situations. So that's why I love playing chess. And number 3, unfortunately, the media law published last year and issued in 1 week in the Duma, it was clear for me I'm not allowed after the 1st of January 2016 to work as a general manager and publisher. And I think it's probably a period of a couple of years, but I'm very hopefully that the team learned in crisis situations to live, to survive, to work, and what we call the oppositional sort of independence, freedom spirit is still extremely alive. Don't think free press is not possible in Russia. You just have to be smarter, play chess, and play pool. Thank you.